I have one time tonight. God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Aaron J. Space the Word. I'm here to give you a little short news and a word on tonight. Now we're gonna talk about this cop had threatened an arrest, an assault, not walking on a sidewalk, and then get worse, and she didn't have an ID, so he wanna arrest her, physical abuse her, because she was walking on a sidewalk with her grandchild. Walking on the sidewalk with her grandchild. I can see if you're driving a car. You're driving a motorcycle. You need your driving license. You need your ID. But if you're walking, sometimes you jogging or sometimes you might go to the store. Long as you walking, it's not really necessary that you have your ID. It's good to have it, but it's not for you to be getting arrested from walking on the sidewalk without your ID. So the police brutality profound are not uncommon in the city shown it. So a woman called the outrageous behavior of a local police, an encounter that she had with them while she was walking, minding her business, walking along the road with her grandson. So now this woman was walking with her grandson on the road. She gets stopped by the police, and he just brutalizing, just doing all kind of stuff. And she's asking, what is the problem? What is the reason for all this behavior that you have? And he then asked for an ID. So when she spoke and asked him, what did I do wrong? I'm walking on the sidewalk. What have I do wrong? So he said, well, what, her ID. So she said she don't have an ID. So then he wants to arrest her because she walking on the sidewalk and then she don't have an ID. So if you walking on a sidewalk, it's not necessary that you need an ID. It's not a crime to walk without your ID. It's a crime if you drive your car without your driving license. But it's not a crime if you walking on a sidewalk without your ID. Some people jog without their wallet, and ID and all this stuff because they're jogging. All kind of things happen to people that jogging by themselves. So you should not be able, you know, you should be able to walk a sidewalk, without your ID. So I ain't never heard of this. You walking on the sidewalk and the police stop you, and then ask you for your ID. And if you don't have an ID, they arrest you. So if you're walking, it's not a crime if you're walking on a sidewalk and you don't have your license or your ID. So I do have a word for you on today. Tonight, we're gonna talk about God promised to David. You know, promise to make his name great. Promise to keep the throne in the bloodline. So Second Samuel chapter 7, verse 1 through 17. So after the king was settled in his palace, and the Lord had given him rest from all his enemies around him. Cause remember, it was after 20 years. He just got in sick. You know, he just got in sick because he prayed to God. He said, when I was a boy, you are no man in front of all my brothers. You promised that I will be a king, but I'm not a king. I'm running from some. I'm running to cage. He had got at the end of his rope, and so God had known he was at the end of his rope, So God said it was that time. So now God gave him, now he is over king over Israel, you know, and so David is finally settled in his house, experience God gift of rest from surrounding enemy. Now he not only was running from Saul, but he also was running from his enemy also, and And a lot of them were just jealous because he was good with his hands. You remember he told knocked that big giant down because he was already good in the field. He already said, I can break an animal in half just with my hands. So he had said to Nathan, the prophet, that here I am living in a house of Caesar, while the ark of God remained in a tent. You know, so David finally, so this how they came about with the tent. So David, they've been carrying the tent with them ever since they been released from Egypt. And that been years ago, and still carrying the tent around. So this David, dwelling in a stable, permanent, and secure. So why to all, of God present, So Nathan replied to the king, whatever you have in mind, go ahead and do it, for the Lord is with you. So David had proceeded what's in his heart to build a house of God that he knew. Now he dreamed of this. Now this gonna be David. This gonna be David's dream to build a house, you know, but it's gonna be God. It's David's dream, but it's gonna be God's temple. So it was a good work, and fit for a king to do. So he might think that it was proper, time, and being encouraged, but that night the word of the Lord had came to Nathan and said, you know, go and tell my servant David, this is what the Lord say. Are you the one to build the house dwell in, for me to dwell in? So this message was from Nathan, from God, that was saying that he didn't want David to build the house. And see, this how it came about. David was dreaming to build a temple for the tent that been carrying around ever since the Israelite had released from Egypt. No, nobody didn't know what the tent until David got in seat. And this still was years later afterwards, because God could tell him, but how can you wait this long? How come you ain't do nothing about it then? So he leaned that God did not want him, to build a temple. Because he was a warrior. He was a fighter, so he shed a whole lot of blood, So David had made the plan to collect the materials so that his son Solomon could begin to work on the temple. As soon as he become king, so now God promised David that he will be the king over Israel, which he are now, but God don't want him to build the altar. I have not dealt in a house from the day that I brought the Israelite up out of Egypt from this day. I have been moving. So from place to place. He said, I've been moved from place to place, with the tent as many dwellers. So that's why he came up with the idea, the dream of doing the tent, because he had to carry this tent everywhere he go. Now, this tent should have been taken care of right after they got settled in their land. But every king they had, did not organize it, wasn't worrying about the tent. So now God feel like it's time for the temple. They have not have anything permanent going on. So the tent going from place to place. Now, since he had brought the Israelite up out of Egypt, this same tent, following them everywhere they go. Now, wherever I have moved with all the Israelites, did I ever say to any, the rulers who I commanded, to the shepherd, my people Israel, why have you not built me a house of sin? Now, see, God wanted him to build that temple, way before he started shedding blood. Cause remember, he killed the husband and married the wife. That kind of shed of blood God talking about. He ain't talking about the rather fight like I send you out there and go fight. He's talking about the ones that God did not initiate it for him to go fight. So he should have thought about this temple way before he started doing that nonsense. Now since David had been king over the Israelites, he had not offered to build the temple up until now. The tent had been traveled with them, everywhere they go. Now God had brought them out of Egypt, and this the same tent been out of Egypt. So now did tell my servant David that this is what the Lord Almighty has said, that I took you from the pasture, from the tent of the flocks, appointed you ruler over my people Israel. Now God telling David, because David was feeling a whole type of way now. Okay, you don't want me to build a temple. You want my son to build a temple. So excuse me. So God know he feeling a type of way. So now I'm gonna tell my servant David, the Lord Almighty said, I took you from your father, from tending the flocks and appointing you ruler over my people, right in front of your brothers. He had about 10 brothers, and God announced him in front of his brothers. So God reminded David of three things that God had done for David. So God let him know, I know you're feeling the type of way right now. So I'm telling you right now, David, in the past, God had took David from being a shepherd to the prince over Israel. So took him from following the sheep, to be a prince over my people. So God called his people prince. Israel. So now God reminded David, what he did for him, because David is sad. He's sad right now. He's not building the temple. So I have been with you. Now God telling him, God still trying to cheer him up. God said, I had been with you wherever you went. I had gone with you. I have cut off all your enemies before you. So now I will make your name great. Like the name of the greatest man on earth. Now God trying to cheer him up. God said, I've been with you wherever you went. I was with you. When you were running in that cage, I was with you. When you kept on running from Saul, I was with you. When you was running from no enemies, I was with you. I was with you wherever you went. And so he told her. He said, I'm also, so he just become to be king. So God say, I'm about to make your name great. Everyone gonna know about you. I'm about to announce you. I'm about to make your name great. They're all gonna know about you. So now God had established David. He established, he just become king, So God about to establish him. God about to make his name great, But God had to go down memory lane, God had to let him know, look, I had picked you right in front of your brothers. You had 10 brothers, and you was the youngest. And I chose you. I chose you over your brother. You was a shepherd in the field. And I took you to be a prince over my people. So now God is establishing him right now, for the rest over his enemy, So God also said he will make David's name great, and this God promises to David. Now, while David was running from Saul, and his enemy, God said, I've been with you. I've been with you wherever you went. You was with that man wife. You had that man husband day. I was with you. I was with you wherever you did. I was with you. So I've been with you wherever you went. So remember, David had got anointed since he was like 17 years old. But it took 20 years. In those 20 years, God had protected David that whole time. Because God made a promise to him. God had anointed him, to be king over his people. It never had happened, but God was protecting him until it happened. So God gonna be with you until your project is complete. And so God was with him. God let him know, and he probably didn't even know God was with him. Say, and I will provide a place for my people Israel, and will plant them so that they can have a home of their own. and no longer be disturbed with wicked people would not oppress them anymore as they did at the beginning. Because God gave them a place already. Give them candy. It took them 40 years to get to it, but they had their own land. But they allowed people to oppress them in their land. They allowed people to have them enslaved, captivity, and everything else. And God gave them that land. Not for God pulled them from being a slave. And they allowed people to come in their land and take over them. So God said, I'm about to give them a land of their own, and no one gonna be able to disturb them, oppress them, anymore like they did at the beginning. So evildoers will not continue to oppress them as they have done before. And I will provide a homeland for my people. Israel planted them in a secure place where they will never be disturbed. So I had done everything since the time appointed leader. Now over my people Israel. Now I will also give you rest, from all your enemies. Because see, David was running a long time between from Saul and his enemy. So God said, it's about time for you to have rest. I'm about to give you rest over your enemies, and so all your enemies. And the Lord had declared, that you, the Lord Himself, declare to you that the Lord Himself will establish your home, your home for you. Now see, God done a lot for him, because he was sad because he not been in the temple. So God gave him something better. Give him something better. Now God had promised David future, appointed a place for his people so they won't be disturbed, so they have their own place. So God would make a house for David, establish his kingdom and place David, so make David, and he also gonna make David name great. So when your days are over and you rest with your ancestor, I will raise up your offspring to succeed you, your own flesh and blood, and I will establish his kingdom. Now God giving him rest over his enemy, and God gonna make his name great. So now God is telling him, I'm about to establish the kingdom for you, your throne. You know, everyone in your bloodline is be able to be on this throne. And Jesus gonna be in his bloodline, and Jesus gonna be the king over them too. But he gonna be the temporary. Jesus had to be on the run. So these words from God to David, this is a powerful promise, with application that right then and fall from them. So now the other promise is in David, the son of Solomon, that who will indeed build a house in a temple for the dwelling of God's glory. So he is the one who will build a temple, the house for the name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom, forever. So Jesus Christ, is David. David will never die, and nothing can bring him down from his throne. God promised, that he will secure his throne. Now God promised he gonna secure his throne. Now nobody else will be able to be on that throne but David bloodline. So I will be with his father, and he will be my son. And when he does wrong, I will punish him with a rod, by men with affliction by human hand. So he let him know. So this is when David departed. David ancestors, I mean his people behind him, they will be established. God said, I'm going to establish them. Everyone from your bloodline will be on this throne. So the detail, the relationship that God will have, with this coming son of David. Now God has said that he will be the father to this man. It is important that we remember when this promise is being made. We in the new covenant church that are used to ideas, of God being our Father. So but my love will never be taken away from him, as I took it away from Saul, whom I removed from before you. Now, your house in your kingdom, your house in your kingdom, will endure forever. Before me, your throne will be established forever. Now, David requests to build the temple, for good, but God said no to him. To it. This does not mean that God reject David. God loved David. In fact, that God was planning to do something even greater in David's life. Not only he wasn't trying to reject David. It is that David did so much, but God still has something better in mind for David. Sometimes when doors close, opportunity close, but a lot of time, you know, uh, something better something good be better for you. So God was planning to do something even greater in David's life. Didn't allow him he didn't allow him to build a temple, but although God turned down David's request, he promised to continue the house of David forever. So God, David still got good news. Now Nathan had reported to David all the words of this entire revelation. Now the Lord will raise up David, offspring, and the Lord will establish his kingdom, a kingdom that will never be destroyed. So he will build a house for the name of the Lord, and the throne of his kingdom will be established forever. And also God will make David's name great. God will make David's name great. He said everyone will know about your name. Everyone will know about your name. You know. And see, God gonna establish it. Just like God had established Joseph. God had made a promise to Joseph. You gonna be in charge, you're gonna be this, you're gonna be that. And he found himself in all kind of situations. But God straightened it out. God put that dream in Pharaoh, and nobody was able to fill that position but Joseph. And then God had established Joseph also, because Joseph had family also. You know, that Joseph had his own little place, house, everything. So God had established him just like He established David in his whole household. You know, uh, that's all I have for you today. We also talk about this police were being mean and cruel to this woman, when she was just minding her business, walking on the sidewalk, and the police just stopped her, just being rude, talking to her any kind of way, about when she respond back, oh, let me see your ID. So it's not a crime for you to walk down the street without your ID, you know. And so, if you in a car, that's something different. But if you walking, it's not a crime for you not to have an ID, So that's all the word and news I have for you tonight. Y'all have a blessed night, and I'll see y'all on the next video.